Now, there has been some absolute blockbuster trades across the NBA in the off-season. We're going to discuss all of those and their impacts on NBA fantasy this season. Let's get into it. G'day, everybody. Welcome back to the Ball Logic podcast. We're here to talk off-season trades, and haven't there been some trades, Matty? There's been a few blockbusters across the NBA off-season so far, and I guess there's going to be some implications when we're talking fantasy basketball from that.
Yeah, and we've done this a bit later just because, one, it's getting closer to the start of the NBA season, but there's a fair few picks traded in those too, and we kind of know where they've landed now. So yeah, it makes it a bit easier to analyze some of these trades.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to ripping into that. If you haven't yet, please hit subscribe and like. It would support the show and get the show out to more people. We would appreciate that. If you're listening to us on audio, hit that follow button. Leave us a 5-star review if you like the content. Now, of course, we are mentioning the trades. We've got 8 trades to cover that we think are relevant to fantasy basketball this season. Obviously, we're not going to be talking about every single trade. We're not going to talk about the smaller ones we don't think have an impact. But, mate, there's a couple of big ones straight off the rip, so let's just jump straight into it. And the first trade, it is the Desmond Bane to Orlando Magic. They, obviously have given up a lot of draft capital as well to get him. It changes the dynamic, I guess, a little bit in Orlando, doesn't it? I mean, losing Kentavious Caldwell-Pope isn't exactly a big loss, and then you can fit in a guy like Bane. How do you see this, first of all, away from fantasy? How do you see this impacting the Magic?
Positively, maybe not the best for the stats of Franz and Paolo, but it does just spread the floor a little bit more. Bane's a serviceable defender. Bane at times has been a borderline all-star, and one of my favorite players. I'm a Grizzlies fan, so I'm a bit disappointed. So I think it's a huge get for Orlando. I definitely think it's very hard to say that they've paid overs, but it does seem like a really good haul for somebody like Desmond Bane, which is the one thing that stopped me from being too disappointed. But from fantasy, they definitely got the best player and gives Orlando the best chance at their best, I suppose, to make that next leap forward in the East.
Yeah, I definitely think it makes them better, 100%. No one's debating whether it makes them better. I guess the question mark comes from me as to who does this affect when we're talking fantasy, like Franz Wagner and Paolo Banchero both had over 30 usage last year. Is there every chance that comes back? Desmond Bane only had a usage of 23 last year when he was in Memphis, and that was even when Ja Morant was down for a fair amount of the year. So I guess the question mark is, does Desmond Bane remain the 29th best player in fantasy basketball? My answer's no, just with the amount of mouths to feed in Orlando. Do you agree?
Yeah, I do. And it's really hard because I don't think he gets that much worse. I think his usage kind of stays the same. Yeah. I think it's more like in clutch situations. You have another person that can knock down the. You have another person that can knock down the shot. You've got another person to lean on. You've went and got yourself your secondary ball handler that you've frankly needed with this Orlando team because he can handle the ball. He can defend. A little bit of a jack of all trades, and you know what? If you're struggling for a bucket, he's somebody that you can just get it to, and he can cook.
Yeah, no, completely agree. I think having that extra option on the court is always going to be good, but it's going to hurt guys like Suggs, in my opinion. I think Suggs can probably still play the one, but now having Desmond Bane there that can handle the ball and can facilitate on the court, it probably just limits his upside for me, Suggs. I'm still probably taking him around like maybe back end of the 8th, around that kind of 90 to 100 mark. I'm still happy to take a starting point guard that can get you stocks, but it's a bit of a tricky one, isn't it, when you've got, Suggs probably goes from the 3rd option now behind Wagner and Paolo to the 4th option on the court, which is never a positive when we're talking fantasy. Maybe for his efficiency, that's about it. So he probably is the one that cops the hit out of this the most.
Yeah, and he was the 71st overall last year. I see I've got him at 80 at the moment. So, yeah, he's somebody that I'm cool to take in the right situation. But yeah, like he definitely doesn't get better. Maybe, like you said his percentage. I think maybe his turnovers.
Yep.
There wasn't that second handler, and his turnovers were really poor at 2.9 a game. So yeah, I think that Suggs can get a touch better. He definitely doesn't ruin your free throw percentage, but maybe just that 16.2 points. Does it really hurt you if it goes back down there to 14? He wasn't really that assist guy anyway. So yeah, so maybe Desmond Bain does get some assists because they always have bench guys that were really good point guards in Memphis. It's just something they've always had, a backup point guard that can pass the ball. So yeah, I do think that Desmond Bain might get his hand and he gets a little bit of a bump up in assists and his usage kind of stays the same. If he is the 35th best player next year, Desmond Bain, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, pretty much in and around that mark. I don't think he cops a big hit. I think I'd probably be more than happy to take him at the end of the third. If he was sitting there on the board, I'd definitely be tempted. Just on the Suggs conversation very quickly, his free throw percentage went up 130 last year, up to 88.2% from the free throw line. His 3 seasons before that was 75, 72, and 77. So are we looking at someone who's drastically improved, nearly 10% on their free throws over one random year? Or are we going to see a drop back? I think there's a reality that we see him drop back into the 700s in his free throw again, which is going to kind of tank his value a tiny bit for me. But yeah, look, I mean, we're not going to really argue back and forth about the guy that's going to be taken at 80. So, it doesn't move the needle enough to have a deeper conversation about it. Mate, what does, though, is the next trade on the list. It's Kevin Durant. Off to the Houston Rockets, and obviously the Phoenix Suns got Jalen Green, they got Dylan Brooks, and they got a ton of picks back for him as well. And I guess there's some pretty obvious guys that cop a bit of a hit when it comes to KD coming across. Tari Eason, what kind of opportunity is he going to get? Jabari Smith Jr., is he going to be a guy that cops it a little bit, depending on whether they play KD at the 3 or the 4? How do you see this all playing out in Houston?
Yeah, I'm not sure it affects KD at all. Firstly, I do think that what they had to give up for KD, even at his age, was something that Houston really just had to do. Like, the winners are Houston, the city. They have a better chance at a championship. And yeah, it's really hard to tie your championship aspirations to, a 36-year-old with wonky knees, but he's also the best chance they've had at getting a chip in absolutely years, probably since James Harden was in his prime. So you take that risk. And did they get any worse? Like trading Dylan Brooks and whatever. I understand that Dylan Brooks is somebody that has a really big motor, but the negative things that he does for your team, and I've seen it firsthand, the negative things that he does for your team, I'm not sure KD's really going to do. So, yeah, maybe they can even coast. They were the number 2 seed last year. And I have KD about where I've had him the last couple years in the early second round. I would love, and I am completely fine to have him there. Does present some opportunity at Phoenix.
Yeah, definitely. I think, look, we talk about Devin Booker a fair bit, and he's not going to get much of a mention on this show, but definitely in future shows. I think he probably projects into a first-round pick this year, just having the team in the spot that they are with the lack of depth behind him. Jalen Green is also a guy now that's been traded over there that's pretty much going to be able to put up 20 to 22 shots a game, and I think, we saw a glimpse of this in Houston anyway. We know the type of player that Jalen Green is, and the potential that he has. That doesn't really move the needle for me in terms of where I draft him either. I'd probably draft him in the same spot that I would have last year. But at the same time, I think that they both become pretty good options over in Phoenix. Just losing KD, losing that amount of usage. There's opportunity for Jalen Green and Devin Booker I'm super high on.
Yeah, again, huge winner. Devin Booker, he's going to take 1,000 shots, and that is actually a real metric. So,
that's how we talk in Australia, mate. I guess the last big blockbuster, we'll call it a blockbuster trade, mainly because I'm an Atlanta fan, but it's Porzingis to Atlanta. Obviously, a 3-way trade. It doesn't really move the needle for me either way with Georges Niang or Terrence Mann. But Atlanta, have they fleeced to get him here? Because I feel like what they had to give up to get Porzingis, you do every single day without thinking.
Well, Boston's goal was to get worse, and they succeeded. So it was a trade that worked for everyone. So yeah, look, I would have put my hand up for Porzingis. He is a great player when healthy. Again, there's a lot of question marks around his health, but I mean, this can only be good for Trey. I'm not sure it's any better for the Zinger, but I do think that Trey just gets an extra viable option to hit. And look, I really like a Kongwu, but he just won't play the minutes. He's a backup now, so yeah, just hit. Kristaps is such a better option for Trey, an already fantastic assist guy.
Yeah, the assist leader last year now gets another option on the perimeter. For me, it opens up the court so much more for Trey. When you've got a guy that can pop to the 3-point line, it's going to create lanes that Trey hasn't had over the last few years. He's had Clint Capella clogging up the paint in the pick and roll, who hasn't been able to pop for the last 3-4 years. Okongwu's only just started shooting threes, I think it was last year. So, having now that extra guy on the perimeter, and also, Jalen Johnson healthy, Dyson Daniels can shoot the 3-ball, and Ricochet, who's probably going to be the starting small forward for me to start the year in Atlanta, so that they can play Porzingis at the 5. Trey's going to have a mountain of options now. He's probably not going to know which way to go. But I think he might finish at the rim a little bit more efficiently, and his field goal percentage probably comes up as a benefit of that.
Yeah, that is a big thing too that I wasn't really considering. The fact that Kristaps can spread the floor. There's going to be a little bit more space. Trey is fucking quick, and can go downhill. And over the last couple of years, he's been running into Capella. He's been running into Okongwu. Call this. All the boys get out, and and if your center comes across, then Kristaps can knock the shot. I predict a very, very big year for Trae Young, and look, I'll take Porzingis in the right build, especially needing those threes from your center. At like a -1 rank, he is phenomenal. Because he does still get 6.8 assists, 20 points a game, the 1.5 blocks, as well as a guy that can get threes. Is really handy in the right build.
Yeah, and probably a punt rebounds build. He's the perfect center to have, where 6.8 rebounds for a center is pretty ordinary. But when you've got a guy who can also shoot 2.5 threes a game, at nearly, I think he shot at 41.5% last year from 3. So he's knocking down his shots. He's getting 20 points a game for you. You can punt rebounds and not worry about it. And he's going to get you 1.5 blocks for a guy that can't get rebounds. So and he doesn't hurt you in the turnover category either, because he doesn't handle the ball enough. So I think he's quite a good shout around that end of third round. I think in my draft board, I've got him around the 35, 36 mark. So if he's still on the board at the end of the third, I'm very happy to take him.
Yep, what have you got him, 34th? Yeah, I've got him at 37, just below like blokes like Desmond Bain and stuff. But I could very easily be talked into moving him up, and especially if you do need that center, I've got blokes like Derek White, Jamal Murray, Jalen Brunson, Fox. I've got quite a few point guards there. Of course, on the fly, if you don't need a point guard, just taking a center in there. There's lots of mid centers. There's some really good centers in that sort of range that sort of go from your mid 30s all the way to 60s. And I've got blokes like Kristaps and those guys ahead of Kristaps, and I've got them ahead of Mark Williams and Şengün and blokes like that. So that's probably a level when we're looking at tiers how high I am on Kristaps.
And, we'll talk about the Capella trade a little bit later, but, that's probably why you've got him ahead of Şengün. Having to share that spot with Steven Adams and Clint Capella this year, it's, he's still the guy. He's still going to get the start, but it's definitely not as appealing. minutes-wise, knowing that he's going to have to share some minutes with both of those guys. So, no, I completely agree, mate. Let's move on to these the lesser trades, but definitely still relevant when we're talking fantasy. The first one is the man you just mentioned, Mark Williams, off to the Phoenix Suns, traded for a couple of picks and Mičić. I mean, look, he's still got Nick Richards behind him. Isn't it ironic? They just seem to be following each other to different teams at this point. Nick Richards probably the one that cops the hit there, but they've got the young fella that got picked in number 10. What are your thoughts on him? Because he's pretty much NBA ready now, isn't he?
Yeah, I think that he is. It's kind of hard. Like they needed a center, and they went and got themselves Mark Williams. But like, is the situation any better? Like, can you see Mark Williams absolutely cook from that spot?
Not enough value for me to go, yeah, he's going to jump up 20 spots. He's pretty much in the same situation where if we look at what he did last year, it's not like he's going to take a huge jump. Where is he ranked last year? I'm struggling to find 44th. He doesn't shoot threes. No, not an assist guy. Steals are low. He just does a job, and he doesn't hurt you in free throw percentage, but I don't see him finishing top 40. And he's ranked 44th from last year. I've got him, I think, in the 60s from memory. So that's probably where I'd happily take him, I reckon. Where are you taking him?
I've got him 49th, but again, I've only recently moved Miles Turner in front of him, and it does, depend on the builds that I'm going. I'm so, I suppose, fixated on these tiers and not getting pigeonholed into thinking, oh, I think Mark Williams is better than Miles Turner. I mean, it depends what I fucking need at the time. But I do think that, your blokes like Kristaps, Mark Williams, and Miles Turner are a step above, your Şengün's, probably even Vooch at his age, and blokes like that. I'm not taking Mark Williams at 44, just expecting him to be the 44th player. You just want him to slide to you in the 50s, and you're hoping in the 60s to even get him. Like, he's definitely better than Jared Allen and, in my opinion, Walker Kessler and Jakob Poeltl. But yeah, it's just where you've got him sitting and when you need him. Like, if you end up getting, say, a guard that you see in a higher tier and have to forego Mark Williams you get Jared Allen later on, have you really lost? Probably not.
No, not at all. Not even close. And I guess the benefit to Mark Williams is that most of your centers that shoot a high, clip from the field, he's a 60% guy from the field, usually hurt you in free throw percentage, and he doesn't. He, 804 from the free throw line last year. He's a rebound guy, can get you 15 points a game, that shoots well from the floor and doesn't hurt you in free throws. And that's pretty rare. So, for me, I think I've got him 52, I just checked. So if he drops into the 50s, I'm more than happy to take him there. And I think the one thing, after doing a couple of mocks over the last 2 weeks as the preseason started, I've noticed that I can actually look a little bit later at centre. I don't have to reach for those really early guys, because there's some pretty good value coming up between, like you mentioned, that 40 to 70, 80 mark that are going to provide for you this year at centre.
Yeah, I saw Zubac go into was it 100 in the mock on the weekend? I didn't. Wild. Yeah, like when you think about all the good picks that you get, instead of taking Mark Williams at ADP at 55 to get him later on, you're not really losing it at center. So he's probably one of the guys that I would stay away from, even though I think the situation is good. It just didn't get better.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Let's move on to the next one. Jordan Poole. A little bit of a swapsy there with CJ McCollum, Kelly Olynyk over to Washington, Sadiq Bey and Jordan Poole end up in New Orleans, and obviously with no DeJounte Murray to start the season after that Achilles tear that he's coming back from, it's kind of like they might give him the keys to the city to start the year at least. How do you see him starting in the point guard position? Do you see him playing the two? How do you see this playing out there?
Yeah, I do think that he can absolutely cook. I do want to quote the great Carl Johnson from San Andreas. Shit. Here we go again. Because I was one of those people. I didn't actually draft him. I ended up traded for him after everybody was super frustrated. Was it not last year, the year before?
Shout out to Mally. I think you would have got him from him, wouldn't you? I think Mally drafted him in nearly every draft that year.
Yeah, I think I did get him off him actually, and and he was getting taken in the 40s. I'm not going to fall into the trap of getting him in the 40s again. I think that he is a systems guy, and if he falls to me in the 60s, I can see some upside. But I do think he can absolutely cook on this team, and I do think that it's a little bit of a youth movement in New Orleans. I understand the CJ trade. I don't expect CJ to be there at the end of the year, which is something I'm very cautious of, because I think he will get traded to a contender, and maybe a couple of seconds gets you CJ McCollum closer to the deadline if you find yourself in that 7th or 8th position and you want to elevate yourself. I think that that's sort of the role I see for CJ this year. So drafting CJ with caution, drafting Poole with caution, probably in the 60s. I just think somebody else will fall into that trap. They've had 1 year to heal.
Yeah, I agree. Look, and I very well might be that guy that takes him in the 50s. I think
50s is fine. I think like I've just seen him drafted in like the early 40s a few times, and I was like, you can't be doing that.
Nah, not when he hurts you. So in a few different categories, like he's going to hurt you in turnovers. He averaged 3 turnovers a game last year. He shoots .432 from the floor, and he doesn't get you any rebounds or blocks. So he's going to get you points. He averaged 20 points per game last year. I honestly think that's going to be closer to 25 this year. He got 3.5 threes a game. I think that's probably going to be at the same, if not more, next year. Good from the free throw line. So yeah, I mean, he was the 51st best player last year on a Wizards roster that was putrid. And he's I think he's one of those guys that goes on runs, isn't he? Like, you've got to get him and expect that he's going to shit the bed for a few games back to back, or he's going to go on a really quiet month or two. But then he's going to win you some matchups through that middle of the year when he gets cooking.
Yeah, I think Mally had some really good stats about how he finished the year, and everybody kind of forgot. Maybe because they were already out of the matchups because he wasn't fantastic. But you just have a look at how he finished the year, and that's why people are taking him so soon.
Yep.
I hate to say draft with caution for everybody, because I do feel because I am genuinely a guy that there is a spot for everyone. And he did finish the 51st best player. I'm just not sure his situation got that much better going Washington to New Orleans, did it? It's just again, another opportunity for him, and he's had that opportunity year on year out for the last 3 or 4 years.
No, I completely agree. At the moment, his ADP on ESPN is 61 and 60 on Fantrax. So, people are pretty much agreeing with us. Yeah, I think that's a pretty happy spot. If you can get him at the end of the 5th, I reckon you're cheering, depending on your lineup as well. You might have to punt a category or two, but that's completely fine. That's expected with him. Mate, let's move on to the little switcheroo that's going on in Brooklyn and Denver at the moment. Michael Porter Jr. goes to Brooklyn and Cam Johnson ends up over in Denver. Fantasy basketball aside for a second, Michael Porter Jr. is absolutely cooking. He's on some sort of media tour over in Brooklyn in New York at the moment. Does that affect... We were talking about this in the chat earlier. Does him just cutting loose on media and coming out and saying a fair few questionable things just kind of say that he's a man that has nothing to lose? Does that concern you at all coming into this, or do you reckon he's just got a bit of freedom he didn't have in Denver?
I mean, maybe he does have freedom, but he's also playing for a team that's got absolutely no championship aspirations. He's just going to go out there and enjoy himself. It's like me turning up to C grade. Does it really fucking matter? I'm just turning up. I'm just going to take 20 shots a game if I need to. And I think Porter Jr. is going to do the same. I think that he has to show his value to get to another team, which I don't think it's fantastic the way that he's going. But I do think that he's just going to go out there. He's just going to be carefree. He's going to be taking so many shots. He does have a chip in the last couple of years. What's he got to lose? He's just going out there. He's just going to shoot his shots. He is going to absolutely cook your field goal percentage. And probably your turnover. Will you get your turnovers? He probably won't pass it.
He hasn't seen a shot he doesn't like, that's for sure.
Yeah, like he could honestly be the scoring champ if he plays enough games. But he's playing for a spot, and I do think that there is definitely a point in your drafts that you could get Michael Porter Jr. I think he is in a better spot for fantasy.
I tend to agree. I think I mean, like, Cam Johnson and him is the conversation, isn't it? Who are you taking first? I think I'm taking Michael Porter Jr. on upside. I think Cam Johnson's upside's limited in Denver. I think, obviously, when you've got Jokic and Murray and everybody else around you, you're the third or fourth guy. It's just not as appealing for me. Whereas, he's going to be the guy in Brooklyn. Michael Porter Jr. is going to get his shots up. He hit 504 from the field last year on 13.5 shots a game, which is not going to happen here. That we're going to see a regression in field goal percentage for sure. But a guy that can get you 2.5 threes, 3 threes a game, a guy that can get you nearly 20 points and 7 boards without hurting you in turnovers and usage is pretty handy. So where do you have him on your draft board at the moment? He was 83rd best player last year. How's he looking on our draft board at the moment?
I've got him at 58, so I do think in the right build, he can definitely improve. You're chasing those points. You're already punting your field goal percentage. Michael Porter Jr. Can cook.
Yeah, I've got him 67. A few of us have him in the 60s. One, I think, Horse has him in 70. So like that's probably the range there is the 6th round. You take a punt on someone like Michael Porter Jr., pending what you need when it comes to categories. Let's move on to John Collins, mate. Gone to the Clippers in a pretty good spot now. Is it a better spot for fantasy? It's yet to be seen. Norman Powell ends up at the Miami Heat as well. We'll talk about them too, I guess, because they're probably the most relevant. I honestly don't know whether this is a better spot for John Collins. He's now the 5th option on the floor. I think he's going to take a pretty sizable hit to what we saw last year, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything considering I think he finished the 29th best player last year, John Collins. So if you're thinking you're going to get that, you're absolutely not. 30th best player last year. He's going to take a pretty sizable hit. What are your thoughts on him?
I'm a huge John Collins fan. This is fucking dog shit for him. He is going to be basically a lob catcher for these guys. He's going to go out there and play hard, and it's going to be really good for, probably his career and his legacy. I think that's taken a little bit of a hit in the last couple of years. He legit got traded because he was too good. And that is not something you can say for too many players.
No, you're right. He didn't fit into the Hawks system. He did they just wanted him to be a corner catch and shoot guy. He's not that. You saw all the success that he had early on in his career in the pick and roll, and then they go, "Cool, okay, we're not going to do that anymore, man. Can you just go and stand out of the way? Thanks."
Yeah.
And it became Trey's team, and there were talks of rifts between John Collins and the locker room, and it just became a complete mess in Atlanta. So it was good that he got out of there. He showed us what he can do in Utah. Now he goes back to Atlanta Light in the LA Clippers. But great opportunity for him playing around guys like Kawhi and Bradley Beal and James Harden. But at the same time, it's not good for fantasy at all. I'm looking here in consensus. We have him at 96. You're way off him. You got him at 122. I'm at 90. So look, I don't really have an opinion either way on whether you take him as a late round flyer or whether you go early on him, but I'm thinking I'm leaning towards outside the 100 now, personally.
Yeah, and he's somebody for me that, I slide him down to the 120 because I don't want to be... I love John Collins, a huge John Collins fan. I do not want to be tempted to take him, so I don't even want him anywhere near my keyboard when I'm looking at it, when I load my rankings into ESPN and everything like that for my own drafts. Somebody I do want in my rankings is Norman Powell. Mm-hmm. He had a phenomenal year last year, and he was the 77th ranked player. I think he has all the opportunity in the world to be, dare I say, Jimmy Butler. I think that he will absolutely cook. I've got him at 55 in my draft board, and I have seen myself taking him in quite a few mocks already. Just a guy that I think will fit really well beside Tyler Hero, and get the defensive assignment a lot as well. But also, I think he's just going to knock down shots at the other end. 22 points per game last year. Turnovers aren't too bad because he doesn't do that much of the ball handling. Probably going to lead the second unit as well as play with the starting team as well. I'm yes, super high. He played 32 minutes a game last year and could do exactly the same in a way better situation.
Yeah, I rate it. He's definitely in a better spot, 100%. He's the winner, fantasy winner, I guess we could say, out of this trade. People are taking him at 94, which I think is about a couple of rounds too late, personally. So let's see if that adjusts coming into, I guess we'd call it, it's a bit silly season at the moment, isn't it? These ADPs are a little bit out of whack, so we'll see that improve. He's 77th best player last year in playing in the situation he was playing in. He gets a bump in nearly everything. Efficiency might cop a hit, but a guy that scored 22 points a game last year, that we're looking at an uptick there. You're probably going to also see an uptick in assists as well as the secondary ball handler in this team. So, I rate it. And I'm also super high on Tyler Hero. Not going to talk about him, but I think the situation he's in, like, honestly, he could be a top second round guy.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. Well, high on, honestly, Miami, like some of these takeaways from Miami have given opportunity, which is fantastic for fantasy.
For sure. Let's talk about Anthony Simons, the last trade for today. He ends up in Boston. Drew Holiday ends up back in Portland after Dame was waived. Now, there's been some news that's kind of changed things a little bit for us in the last week or so, with Anthony Simons looking to be coming off the bench now as that sixth man. I don't know whether it hurts him minutes-wise, but I don't love him as a sixth man. I was initially thinking Peyton Pritchard was going to be the guy that had that role, but it looks like Pritchard's going to start at the point guard, Derek White at the 2, Jaylen Brown at the 3. How do you think this all plays out?
Yeah, who's the winner from this trade? And it's Peyton Pritchard. Because Anthony Simons looks to just be a guy that comes off the bench as a little bit of a spark. Not a huge assist guy. So I do understand not starting him at point guard. I think Pritchard's better in that role. Also, they're trying to lose. I do think that Anthony Simons will again be playing for a trade at the deadline. So he's going to want to go to a contender. He's not going to want his career to die out there. He's played for some pretty ordinary teams in the last couple years, but yeah, Anthony Simons, all he does is score. So when you need points, he's going to continue to do that. I can't see that 19 points per game change very much. It's just if you thought that maybe he was going to get that 35 minutes a night and get a bump in the minutes, the bench role probably just ruins that for me.
There's no pathway to big minutes. He'll probably play, late 20s, but Peyton Pritchard's going to get a bump this year just due to starting. It's still Derek White and Jaylen Brown's team. They're going to be the guys that are potential shutdown risks, though, at the back end of the season, with Boston looking to lose and acquire a good pick with Jason Tatum out. So, for me, I'm less keen on Simons now that the news has come out. He's going to be off the bench. More keen on Peyton Pritchard. I think that's definitely where the focus needs to be for this year. Mate, that wraps us up for this one. That is all of the meaningful trades, in our opinion, that definitely there are some winners and some losers either side. So hopefully this is going to help you influence your trades and your draft rankings coming up to the draft season. Mate, we've got another episode coming up in the next day or two that will be covering all the free agency signings, and there's plenty to talk about there. I'm looking forward to that.
No, I'm excited. Thanks, guys. Fantastic.
Catch you later.